Four friends vanished in the Grand Canyon. 7 years later, one returned and revealed it was supposed to be the trip of a lifetime. Four friends, one canyon, and 2 weeks off the grid. Emily had been the spark, always the one with a camera slung over her shoulder, chasing stories that mattered. She pitched it as an escape. No deadlines, no lectures, no deadlines lurking behind screens. Tyler, her boyfriend, didn't need much convincing. A wilderness guide in training, he saw the Grand Canyon not as a destination, but as a test. The place he could prove himself. Jason was skeptical at first. Graduate school consumed him, his mind never far from unfinished thesis and research grants. But Emily was persuasive. One last hera before real life, she promised. And Sarah, Emily's roommate and the quiet artist of the group, needed no selling point. She wanted to sketch the canyon walls at dawn, to lose herself in colors older than memory. They chose a remote trail that twisted away from the tourist routes, the kind of path that didn't come up on travel blogs or Instagram tags. They packed meticulously. Freeze-dried meals, water filters, headlamps, topo maps marked with Emily's careful notes. Jason brought his drone. Tyler brought a satellite phone just in case, though they all agreed not to touch it unless it was life or death. They left behind city noise and parental warnings, boarded a rental van, and drove east under a sky heavy with stars. The last photos show them smiling in the parking lot at dawn, packs leaning against their legs, mugs of gas station coffee balanced on the hood. Emily's caption read, "Into the wild Grand Canyon bound." That was the last post anyone saw. The ranger remembered them vaguely laughing, Tyler waving off a permit suggestion, Emily peppering him with questions about local legends. No one worried. College kids took to the backcountry every season, looking for their edge, their moment. 2 days later, a flash storm swept through the region, dumping rain into the narrowest slots, carving fresh scars into the sandstone. Campers sheltered, rangers waited it out. By the time the sun returned, the only thing left at the group's marked site was an overturned tent and 4 names that would echo into the silence. Emily was always chasing something. A headline, a shot, a thrill. She'd been writing for the college papers since freshman year, the kind of girl who'd leap into a protest line or wade into a flood zone with nothing but a notebook and stubbornness. Her parents said she burned too bright. Tyler adored that about her, even when it scared him. Tyler had grown up with dirt under his nails and calluses on his hands. The outdoors was his sanctuary, the one place he felt like himself. He guided treks across the Rockies, could read a sky like most people read texts, calm, centered, patient. But when Emily pulled him into her whirlwind, he followed every time. Jason was the overthinker, graduate student in environmental science, obsessed with climate data and models, endlessly curious, but rarely brave. He joined the trip half for the break, half because Emily dared him to. A city kid at heart, he worried about everything. Blisters, snakes, sunstroke, bad signals. Still, there was something about Emily's energy that made him want to push past his limits. Even when every part of him said no, Sarah was the quiet observer, the one people forgot was there until she handed them a sketch they never saw her make. Soft-spoken, thoughtful, more at home in paint than words, she carried her insecurities like a second skin. She wasn't sure why Emily had chosen her for this trip, but she was grateful. She wanted to see the canyon draw the light as it moved across stone, capture the way time carved memory into rock. Together, they were an unlikely patchwork, held together by Emily's stubborn will and Tyler's steady gravity. They had their tensions, Jason's anxiety clashing with Tyler's laid-back confidence. Sarah's silences puzzling Emily's constant chatter, but they laughed easily. They shared snacks and secrets on long walks. They were young enough to believe that nothing bad could happen to them, that the world would wait until they were ready. In the photographs, they looked like every other group of 20s searching for themselves in wide open spaces. But the canyon was older, deeper, and far less forgiving, and it was already waiting. The morning they set out, the sun hadn't yet touched the canyon walls, and the air was sharp with desert chill. Emily sent one last text to her sister, "No service soon. Love you 4," and posted a photo of the 4 of them at the trailhead, all grins and sun hats, packs bigger than their backs. Jason snapped a few drone shots, the little machine buzzing above them as they adjusted their gear. Sarah half hiding from the camera with a shy smile. Tyler double-cheeked the topo map, tracing the trail with his finger, murmuring about water sources and rest points. At the campground check-in, they left their names in the logbook. Emily Chen, Tyler Monroe, Jason Patel, Sarah Vance. Under expected return, Emily had scribbled July 12th, give or take. They didn't know that people would later circle those names, run fingers over the loops and swirls of their handwriting, searching for meaning in the ordinary. The trail took them deeper that afternoon, away from the clusters of tourists and the sound of car doors slamming in the lot. They passed ancient petroglyphs, rockfall chutes, pockets of shade where the air cooled for just a moment. Tyler pointed out lizards, desert primrose, a falcon's distant call. Emily balanced on a narrow ledge for the perfect shot. Jason worried aloud about cloud cover, checking his weather app until the signal bars disappeared. Sarah drifted behind, sketchbook tucked under her arm, stopping to capture a cliff's sharp edge or the curve of a dry riverbed. They made camp that night in a small cove, half sheltered from the wind. The drone caught them at sunset, 4 figures outlined against glowing stone, laughter faint under the war of plastic wings. In the video's last frame, Emily waves at the camera, mouth open mid-laugh, while Tyler adjusts the tent poles. Jason claps sand off his hands, and Sarah kneels to tuck pencils into a worn canvas case. That was the last time anyone would see them whole and together before the canyon swallowed them into its hush. The ranger on patrol remembered hearing them, a ripple of laughter floating across the rocks, carried on the dry wind just before nightfall. He smiled at the sound, imagining young people around a campfire, probably sharing beers smuggled into their packs, telling stories unwinding from a long day. He didn't know they were the same 4 listed on the check-in sheet from that morning. To him, they were just voices in the dark, another fleeting echo in a place full of them. Up at their camp, Emily was teasing Jason, filming him struggle with the portable stove. Tyler was setting up the tarp, squinting at the horizon where clouds were gathering faster than expected. Sarah sat cross-legged near the fire pit, her sketchbook open, hand moving quickly to capture the shifting light. They weren't worried. They were tired, sun-flushed, exhilarated, and a little drunk on the sense of being small in a place so big. When the first droplets fell, Jason cursed softly, pulling gear into the tent. Tyler checked the guidebook, frowned at the sky. "It'll pass," he said, though even he wasn't sure. Emily shot one last video. Blurry, stree with rain. Tyler's voice in the background saying, "Babe, put the phone away." Then the storm hit. The canyon transforms under flash rain, turning dry washes into rushing rivers, hard-packed sand into mud, stone faces into slick, deadly slopes. Wind howled through the crevices, slamming into their little camp with a force none of them had expected. The tarp snapped loose. The tent shuddered under the weight of pounding water. Later, when rangers retraced the site, they found the camp torn open, sleeping bags half buried, footprints leading nowhere. The rain had erased what little the night left behind, but something survived. A notebook, its pages warped and ink blurred. A video file on Emily's phone. Frozen midlife, a sketch in Sarah's pack. The lines shaky but unmistakable. 4 figures under a darkened sky. The canyon walls towering, the storm waiting. They found the campsite 3 days after the storm. A ranger named Mike Kessler spotted it first from the ridge. A flash of blue nylon snagged in the rocks, flapping weakly in the wind. Up close, it was worse. The tent was slashed open along one side, poles snapped like brittle bones. Backpacks lay scattered across the ground, zippers gaping, contents half spilled. A damp sleeping bag, an overturned water filter. Emily's camera cracked where it had been dropped. Jason's drone sat folded near a boulder. Battery drained, its blades caked in sand. The strangest part was the silence. No footprints, no drag marks, no signs of struggle or retreat. The rain had come fast and hard, they reasoned, washing away evidence. But the area around the tent should have held something, even a scuff, a heel mark, a trail of disturbed gravel. Instead, it was as if the camp had been left behind in a hurry, its owners swallowed whole. Sarah's sketchbook was found under the shelter tarp, pages damp and curling at the edges. Inside, rough pencil lines showed glimpses of their last day. A rudge line drawn at dusk, Tyler's profile half-finish, Emily laughing with her eyes squeezed shut. There were no drawings from the night of the storm. Kessler radioed it in. By nightfall, the rim parking lot swarmed with vehicles. Park Service, local deputies, search and rescue trucks, idling with engines humming. Flashlights bobbed through the dark, voices sharp with urgency, maps unfurled across hoods. The families arrived before dawn, faces pale and tight. Emily's mother kept saying, "They're probably walking out right now. They're probably fine." Jason's father clutched his son's water bottle, knuckles white, staring down at the canyon as if he could will it to give up its secrets. The sun came up pink and unbothered, spilling light over the sandstone and deepening the shadows below. Somewhere in those shadows, they told themselves 4 friends were waiting to be found. The first helicopters lifted off at dawn, blades chopping the silence to pieces. From above, the canyon looked endless, a maze of spines and gullies, red rock rippling away into forever. Search teams watched from the ground, eyes fixed on the sky as if answers might fall from it. Dog teams were brought in, paws skittering over slick rock, noses pressed to shirts, hats, anything left behind. They caught scents at the campsite, circled, whimpered, but no clear trail. River patrols swept the Colorado, scanning eddies and bends for anything adrift. A shoe, a scrap of fabric, a body. The canyon gave back nothing. Reporters gathered at the rim by the second day, cameras trained on grieving families, anchors narrating the unfolding tragedy in careful practice tones. Emily's sister clutched a photo of the 4 of them, the one from the trailhead. Jason's advisor issued a statement. Tyler's mother walked to the edge and stared until a ranger gently led her back. Sarah's father was the first to snap. "Why aren't you down there?" he shouted at the search coordinator. "Why aren't you in every damn crevice?" No one had an answer that satisfied. As hours turned to days, the search grid widened. Helicopters ranged farther. Climbers were called in to check ledges, overhangs, caves. Psychics emailed their visions. Locals offered stories about places the rangers had missed. Off-map trails, old mining shafts, cursed ground. The canyon swallowed the days one by one. By the end of the week, the searchers had found more lost gear. A sandal near a wash. The corner of Sarah's hoodie snagged in a mesquite, but no sign of the 4 friends. At night, families sat clustered by the ranger station, wrapped in blankets, eyes fixed on the dark line of the rim. They prayed, pleaded, cursed, whispered bargains into the dry wind, and the canyon kept its silence. By the end of the second week, the official search reports had gone thin. No fresh tracks, no new evidence. The canyon, ancient and indifferent, had erased its visitors like a hand smoothing sand. That's when the theories began. At first, it was simple. Maybe they fell? Tyler and Emily were known to push limits, and Jason's drone footage showed them walking near narrow ledges, laughing, arms wide for balance. One wrong step, loose shale, and the drop did the rest. But that didn't explain the missing bodies, or why Sarah's sketchbook, water-stained but intact, had been left behind with no sign of her ever leaving camp. Then came the animal theory. Mountain lions, someone whispered at a press briefing. A bear, maybe, but experts pushed back. There would have been signs, tracks, blood, drag marks, something. Predators don't clean up after themselves. Whispers spread further. Foul play. Maybe someone they met on the trail. A stranger who came into their camp under cover of storm and left no witnesses. Or worse, someone they knew. A fracture inside the group that no one saw coming. Emily's ambition, Tyler's quiet intensity, Jason's growing anxiety, Sarah's isolations. They had their tensions. But murder, then the darker rumors, stories the locals knew but rarely shared about off-grid communes hidden deep in the canyon. People who called themselves the Keepers, who believed the canyon was sacred ground. There were campfire tales of hikers who went missing only to be glimpsed months later in passing, their eyes hollow, their minds elsewhere. Reporters leaned into the mystery, the beautiful missing students, the untraceable clues, the wilderness that swallowed them whole. News segments played footage of the families holding hands at candlelight vigils, clips of Emily's final social post, drone shots of the sun sinking behind the red rock rim. What had started as a search was becoming something else, a story. It was Jason's father, Raj Patel, who broke the media calm. At first, the family stayed united. Press statements written together, public appeals framed with care, hopeful but measured. But by the third week, Raj was done with measured. He stood at the podium in front of the ranger station, cameras clustered like flies, reporters jostling for position. His hands trembled as he unfolded his notes, but when he looked up, his voice was steady. "Enough," he said. "Enough waiting. Enough speculation. Our kids are missing, and nothing is happening." Behind him, Emily's mother flinched, holding a tissue to her mouth. Tyler's father shifted his weight, arms crossed tight over his chest. Sarah's parents were absent, holed up in their motel room, avoiding the cameras. Raj spoke for all of them, but his anger was personal. He told them about Jason's childhood, the quiet boy who loved numbers and thunderstorms, who grew into the young man standing on the edge of the world with his friends. He talked about the last message Jason sent, a clipped text. "Made it to camp. Signal's bad. Tell Mom hi." The officials stood to the side, stone-faced. The lead investigator murmured about active leads and difficult terrain, but Raj cut him off. "You're not looking hard enough," he said. "If these were your kids, you wouldn't have given up. You'd be down in every ravine, every cave, every goddamn shadow." The cameras caught it all, his voice cracking, Emily's mother turning away, the flash of reporters scribbling notes. That night, every major outlet ran the clip. The handsome grad student with a worried smile, the grieving father demanding answers. But the canyon didn't care about cameras or headlines. It stayed silent under the stars, waiting as it always had. In the weeks that followed, the canyon seemed to play tricks on them. A hiker swore they saw a signal flare at dusk, a thin red thread arcing into the sky near Horseshoe Mesa. Helicopters swept the area at first light, blades stirring the dust into golden clouds, but found nothing. No footprints, no gear, no sign of life. The hiker later admitted they might have imagined it. Then there were the footprints. A pair of climbers descending a narrow chute radioed in that they'd seen human tracks, small and recent, leading toward a slot canyon. Teams rushed in, hope lighting the long faces of the searchers. But when they arrived, the prints led nowhere, ending abruptly at a slick rock slope. Later, trackers suggested they'd belonged to a lone coyote. A torn scrap of maps surfaced near the Colorado River, water bableached and fragile. When rangers compared it to the missing group's maps, it matched the same markings, the same pen strokes, but there was no way to tell how long it had been there or how it got downstream. Every sighting, every tip sent waves through the families. Emily's sister would pace her motel room, phone clutched, white-knuckled. Jason's parents would meet with rangers, notebooks in hand, writing down every detail. Tyler's dad took to driving the canyon rim at night, headlights sweeping the darkness as if he might catch them stumbling out of the shadows. And Sarah's mother, who had stopped speaking to the press, started dreaming of her daughter Sarah, standing at the foot of her bed, soaked from the rain, mouth moving, but making no sound. By the end of the month, even the most hopeful searchers began to admit it. They were chasing ghosts. 6 months later, winter crept into the canyon, softening its edges with frost. The last of the official search teams packed up, the final reports written in dry clinical language. The family stood together as the lead ranger gave a brief statement. No conclusive findings, no recovered remains. Search operations suspended pending new evidence. Reporters moved on. The candlelight vigils dwindled. The missing posters, once taped to every trailhead and cafe window, curled and peeled under sun and wind. Hikers sometimes paused at the trail register, fingers brushing over the 4 names still etched there. But mostly life edged forward. The families didn't. Emily's mother kept her daughter's room untouched, pillows fluffed, curtains open. Jason's parents left his textbook stacked on his desk, pages marked where he last stopped. Tyler's brother took over the wilderness gear shop, never selling the battered pack Tyler left behind. Sarah's mother kept the sketchbook by her bed, its pages softly crumbling. They grieved in separate ways, but under it all was the same raw wound. No body, no grave, no last words. Only the endless canyon, holding its silence like a breath. Sometimes in the thin hours before dawn, hikers near the abandoned camp swore they heard faint laughter or caught a glimpse of movement along the ridge's 4 shapes blurred by distance and time. But the canyon has always been a place of echoes. It gives nothing back that it does not choose to. It was a morning like any other at the Bright Angel Ranger Station. A pale sun lifting over the rim, coffee cooling in paper cups, maps laid out for the day's hikers. Then the door opened. He came in barefoot, jeans torn, skin burnt to leather. His hair hung past his shoulders, matted and sun-bleached, a tangled beard framing a face thin enough to show every bone. For a moment, no one moved. He just stood there swaying slightly, eyes scanning the room like someone stepping out of a nightmare. The clerk was the first to speak, attentive. "Hey, are you all right, man?" But the man's gaze slid past him, fixing on a framed photo tacked near the door, a poster from 7 years ago. 4 young faces smiling under desert sun. His mouth moved, voice cracked and dry. "That's me," he rasped. "I'm Tyler Monroe." The room seemed to tilt. A ranger lunged forward just as Tyler collapsed, catching him before his head hit the floor. Someone shouted for medics. Someone else fumbled for a radio. But above it all, there was only one thought, surfacing like a held breath, breaking water. One of them had come back. In the hours that followed, the news spread like fire across the canyon, out to the town, the state, the country. Missing hiker returns after 7 years. The name was enough to shake loose memories that had gone brittle with time. Emily, Jason, Sarah, Tyler. But when the ranger pressed a bottle of water to his lips, Tyler flinched, eyes darting to the window, to the line where rock met sky. "They're still out there," he whispered. "You don't understand. I shouldn't have come back." Ranger Mark Vasquez was just finishing his shift when the call came through. A hiker had come in, injured, disoriented, possible exposure. He jogged up from the gear shed, expecting another lost tourist. But the moment he saw the man crumpled on the floor of the station, something inside him went cold. Vasquez had been a rookie when the 4 disappeared. He remembered the posters, the long days combing gullies, the hopeless gut-deep exhaustion. And now here was one of them, skin and bone, back from the dead. Tyler was barely conscious, lips cracked, hands trembling as the medics cleaned scrapes and checked his pulse. His feet were raw, blistered to the muscle. His clothes hung in shreds, a tangle of sun-bleached denim and canvas. Around his neck hung a thin leather cord, the kind you tie around something you can't bear to lose. What's your name? Vasquez asked softly, crouched beside him. The answer was barely a breath. Tyler. Tyler Monroe. A flicker of a nod. And then, as if the last of his strength had drained out, Tyler sagged against the cot, eyes rolling back. They're still there, he murmured. They're still watching. For a long moment, no one spoke. Vasquez sat back on his heels, staring at the man who shouldn't be here, whose name should have been only a memory. Outside, the canyon waited, the sun creeping higher, throwing gold across the stone. And deep in its heart, the place Tyler had come from stayed silent, keeping the rest of its secrets. For a long moment after Tyler collapsed, no one moved. The station had gone still, the clatter of radios and boots fading into a hush so thin you could hear the desert wind rattling the window panes. Ranger Vasquez crouched by the cot, watching Tyler's chest rise in shallow, shaky breaths. They called for an ambulance, but the nearest was over an hour away. A nurse from a nearby trail group helped sponge water onto Tyler's lips, careful not to let him choke. His skin was dry as parchment, salt crusted at the hairline. His fingernails cracked and rimmed with dirt so deep it looked permanent. Minutes passed, then his eyelids fluttered. He jerked slightly, like someone waking from a fall. His mouth moved. Vasquez leaned in, straining to hear. I shouldn't have come back. The words were barely a whisper, just threads of sound. His hands clutched at the blanket, at empty air, at something unseen. His eyes flicked around the room, unfocused, frantic. They're still there. You don't know. You don't know what's out there. Vasquez tried to calm him, tried to press him down gently, but Tyler fought even that small touch, shaking his head, whispering fragments. Emily's name, Jason's, Sarah's, a string of numbers, a trail name, a warning. Then, as if a fuse burned out inside him, he went limp, a full body sag that left the room breathless. When the ambulance finally arrived, they slid him onto the stretcher, the weight of his body hardly more than the blanket wrapped around him. As they loaded him in, Vasquez caught one last glimpse of his face, slack, eyes sunken deep. And somewhere under all that ruin, the faintest trace of the boy from the photos, the one smiling under the canyon sun 7 years ago. At Flagstaff Medical Center, the emergency team had been briefed. Long-term exposure, dehydration, possible hypothermia, trauma, but nothing prepared them for Tyler Monroe. The ER lights were too bright on his skin, every rib and spine knob pressing against the sheet. He was malnourished, yes, but not just recently. This was starvation stretched over years, muscles wasted, joints stiff from use without rest. His hair, when they cut it away, came off in brittle clumps, salt-damaged and tangled with tiny bits of bark. But what struck the doctors most were the adaptations. His feet were calloused to the point of armor, soles so thick they'd split and healed over and split again. His hands were cracked, palms layered with old scars, his fingertips dulled like worn tools. His teeth were worn down from grit, his gums receded. Yet none of it was fresh. This was survival, not collapse. Tyler drifted in and out of consciousness, heart rate fragile but steady. They cleaned shallow cuts, treated infections, started fluids. When they tried to check his reflexes, he flinched hard, twisting away from touch, eyes snapping open. Wild. In the trauma bay, Dr. Sheila Kapoor murmured to a colleague, "It's like he's been feral, like he hasn't been among people for years." They whispered theories in the hallway. He must have been sheltered, found by someone? Something. No one survives that long alone, not in the canyon's back country, not without gear, shelter, water. But Tyler had, and when he finally came awake, when they leaned in to ask him the questions that had waited 7 years, he only said one thing: they're still out there. Tyler's parents arrived the next morning, faces pale with the exhaustion of a 7-year vigil. His mother, Linda, clutched a faded photograph as she hurried down the hospital corridor, a picture of Tyler at 23, all sunburned grin and tangled hair, arms slung around Emily, Jason, Sarah. She held it like an anchor, a proof that once there had been a before. When she saw him, she froze. He was thinner, smaller, hollowed out by time and sun and things she couldn't name. His hair had been cut back, his face cleaned, but there was no mistaking the deep lines around his eyes, the way his shoulders hunched as if expecting a blow. "Tyler," she whispered. His father, Frank, stepped forward first, a rough sound tearing from his throat as he grabbed his son's hand, gripping it with both of his own. "Hey, buddy. Hey, we've got you." For a moment, Tyler didn't move. Then his fingers twitched, closing loosely around Frank's wrist. His eyes lifted pale blue, unfocused, rimmed in red. Linda pressed in, wrapping her arms around his thin shoulders, trembling with silent sobs. Tyler let it happen, but he didn't hold on. His gaze flicked to the window to the square of sky beyond it, as if measuring something. The doctors spoke softly in the corner, giving the family space. Nurses paused at the door, watching, and Linda, wiping at her eyes, kept whispering, "You're home, baby. You're home now." But Tyler didn't answer. He just stared past them, past the room, as if part of him had never left the canyon at all. They waited 2 days before sitting down with him. Doctors advised caution, trauma, dehydration, possible dissociation, but the investigators were running out of patience. Detective Sarah Alston entered the room first, a recorder in hand, flanked by 2 federal agents and a local sheriff. Tyler sat propped in the hospital bed, IV line taped to his arm, eyes shadowed and hollow. "Tyler," Alston said softly, taking a seat across from him. "I'm glad you're safe. We just want to understand what happened." He blinked slowly, gaze flicking between them like a trapped animal. "Can you tell us where you've been?" His fingers fidgeted at the blanket's edge, twisting the fabric until his knuckles blanched. His lips parted, closed, parted again. "Emily," he rasped. "Jason, Sarah." He shook his head sharply, wincing as if at a sudden noise. "I don't know. I don't know." The agents exchanged glances. Al Alston leaned in. "You were gone 7 years. Anything you can give us, anything helps." Tyler let out a rough, strangled breath. "I tried to leave," he whispered, "but they wouldn't let me." "Not at first." His eyes flicked up, sudden and sharp. "They're still there." His pulse monitor jumped. Nurses peeked through the glass. Alston kept her voice calm, steady. "Who? Tyler?" she asked softly. "Who's still there?" But Tyler only pressed his hands to his eyes, rocking slightly as though trying to push something out of his head, or maybe trying to keep something in. It came in pieces, like glass shaken loose from the dark. Tyler's voice was thin, cracking at the edges, but the words still came. Alston sat across from him, recorder light blinking, while the agent stayed silent, watching. "There was a cave," Tyler murmured, fingers pulling at the hospital blanket. "Not on the maps. You wouldn't find it unless you knew where to look." His eyes darted to the window, to the sunlight slanting across the floor. They knew. Al Alston leaned in. Who knew Tyler? He shivered. The people there offered. Not hikers, not campers. They lived down there, past the rock falls, past the dry riverbeds. No one would think to go so deep. His lips twisted into something between a grimace and a laugh. But we did. He spoke of shapes glimpsed at dusk, people watching from the cliffs, pale faces in the shadows, of finding the entrance half collapsed, the air inside cool and damp and strange, of voices echoing through the stone, soft and chanting, language he couldn't place. "They watched us for days," Tyler whispered, "before they came, before they took her." Alston's heart clenched. She tried to keep her voice level. "Tyler, what did they want?" He squeezed his eyes shut. to keep us, to change us, to make us forget. His hands trembled in his lap. They almost did. In the silence that followed, the canyon seemed to press in, even here, even miles away. Alston exchanged a glance with the agents, all of them knowing this was no ordinary missing person case anymore. The room felt colder as Tyler's words poured out in halting bursts, his eyes distant, as if replaying something no one else could see. "It was Sarah first," he said, voice tight. "She heard something singing. She went to look. We thought she was messing around." His jaw clenched. "She never came back." Jason wanted to follow, but Tyler held him back. Emily, restless, fired up the drone, sent it buzzing over the ridges, searching for any sign. The night thickened, the canyon walls bleeding into black. And then, Tyler whispered, they heard the voices. They came at dusk, just watching at first, faces painted white, clothes like they'd been living in the dirt. We ran, but it didn't matter. They knew the trails. We didn't. Jason vanished next. One moment he was behind Tyler, the next gone. A muffled shout and then silence. Emily fought, screamed, clawed at the hands, pulling her backward, but the dark swallowed her too. Tyler's voice broke. "I should have stayed. I should have fought." Al's pen hovered over her notepad. "How did you escape?" He let out a sound, a small horse laugh. "I didn't." His gaze locked on hers, hollow and sharp. "They let me go." Tyler's voice lowered as if even now behind hospital walls they might hear. "They weren't just drifters," he whispered. "Not lost, not hiding. They chose it." He spoke of the hidden passages, narrow slits in the rock only locals or madmen would know. Tunnels where the air changed, cool, damp smelling of earth and old fire. Inside the walls were blackened, scratched with markings. Strange spirals and shapes, Tyler said, still floated behind his eyes when he closed them. There were 20, maybe 30 people, though he couldn't be sure. He called them the community, the tribe, the keepers, always half in shadow, faces painted with ash, hair tangled, skin sun-darkened. They moved like animals, soundless, practiced, but at their center was someone different. His name was Abram, Tyler said, voice hitching on the word like it burned his throat. Or that's what they called him. Abram, the one who spoke, who touched their faces, murmured in their ears, told them the canyon was home, a gift, a refuge from the world above. He preached of shedding names, pasts, selves. "You're not lost," he'd say. "You're saved." Emily fought, Jason argued. Sarah wept silently, drawing on the walls with a stolen piece of charcoal. Tyler remembered Abram smiling. "Patient, always patient. You'll understand soon," he promised. They were fed little, worked hard, hauling water, tending hidden gardens, learning the tunnels like veins. Nights were for chants, rituals, long silences where the canyon spoke back. Days blurred into weeks, into months. Tyler stopped counting after the second winter. "Did you try to leave?" Alston asked softly. Tyler's eyes flicked toward the window to the thin line where the canyon sky met the world. "I didn't try," he murmured. "Not until they told me to. It wasn't a break. It was a release." "They brought me to the rim," Tyler said, voice thin as thread. "Abram touched my forehead, told me I was ready, that I could walk between worlds now." His lips trembled. "I don't know why me. I don't know why. Only me." Alston sat frozen, pen motionless, the agents leaning forward like they could pull more from him just by breathing. "How did you survive?" "I walked," Tyler whispered. "North, west, days, weeks. I don't remember. I kept thinking they'd follow, that they were just watching to see if I'd come back on my own." He described slipping through cracks of dawn, hiding under ledges, drinking from muddy springs. His body broke down, his mind blurred at the edges, but some thread of will, of instinct, of something nameless, kept him moving. "They're still there," Tyler murmured, voice trembling. "They always were. They're part of the canyon. Or maybe the canyon's part of them." His eyes met Al's, wide and dark. "They let me go because they knew it wouldn't matter." "Why, Tyler?" she asked quietly. "What wouldn't matter?" He gave the smallest, saddest smile. "Because you can't leave a place," he said softly, "if it's already inside you." At night, Tyler didn't sleep. They watched through the hospital window as he tossed under thin blankets, face pale in the dim glow, fists clenched against dreams no one could touch. Nurses marked it in their notes: insomnia, anxiety, flashbacks, but none of them saw the way he flinched at the shadows that shifted just past the edges of light. By day, therapists sat with him, gentle voices trying to guide him through the memories. But Tyler's eyes drifted, unfocused, hands picking at the band of gauze around his wrist. "It should have been me," he whispered once, voice cracking. "They took them. They took all of them. Why am I here?" The media called him the miracle survivor. Headlines blazed with his name. Old photos splashed across screens. Tyler laughing under a canyon sky, arms around Emily, Jason, Sarah. But when his mother showed him the newspaper, his face crumpled like paper in her hands. He hated the word survivor. He hated the word miracle. At night, his mind filled with their faces. Sarah's wide eyes as she slipped away into the dark. Jason's hand grabbing for his shoulder one last time. Emily's voice screaming his name as the shadows pulled her backward. He heard Abram's voice too, low and patient, whispering promises Tyler never wanted. He paced his room until his feet bled. He sat in the corner and whispered to no one. And in his chest, every beat of his heart felt like an accusation. 2 weeks after Tyler's return, the search teams went back. They moved in carefully this time. Rangers, federal agents, expert climbers, cadaver dogs, satellite drones sweeping above. Maps were marked with every word Tyler could give them: the narrow pass, the collapsed wash, the rock shaped like a skull. But the canyon, as always, offered no welcome. Heat shimmered off stone as they picked their way into gulches where the sun barely touched. They found traces. A circle of charred rock from an old fire. Fragments of bone, too, weathered to match. Cloth so sun-bleached it crumbled at a touch. A footprint maybe? Or just the shape of wind? Inside one narrow fissure, a climber spotted something carved into the stone. Spirals, lines, patterns that looked meaningless until you stared too long, and they began to twist into something else. Every step deeper, frayed nerves tighter. Radios crackled, agents murmured low, but the farther they pressed, the more the canyon seemed to close its throat, swallowing noise, light, time. And all the while, back at the rim, Tyler waited, eyes fixed south, lips moving silently, as if he could feel them down there, as if he knew they were watching still. On the 6th day of the search, just as the team debated pulling back, they found something. A ranger crawling through a narrow side tunnel caught the glint. First, a small silver shape wedged between stone. It was Emily's bracelet, unmistakable, thin, delicate, engraved on the inside with a date. Her sister's initials still clasped, as if it had been slipped off carefully, not torn or broken. The air in the tunnel seemed to change. They pushed deeper, nerves electric flashlights sweeping every crack and shadow. A few meters beyond, tucked into a hollow, was a faded canvas bag. Inside, a cracked water bottle, a handful of colored pencils, a camera missing its battery, Sarah's things. The big find came later, near dusk. Behind a slab of fallen rock, half buried in silt, was Jason's journal, water-damaged, but intact, its pages bloated and curled. The leather cover was worn thin, the strap stretched from years of use. The search team paused. No one said it aloud, but they all felt the same chill. They had found their trail, but not their bodies. They radioed it in. At the hospital, Tyler trembled when they told him. He kept whispering, "Don't go back, don't dig them up, please." But by then, the search had already pushed past the point of turning back. The canyon, it seemed, was beginning to give up pieces, but only the pieces it chose. Jason's journal was sent straight to evidence, dried page by page under careful hands. Investigators pored over it late into the night, turning each water-streaked line like it might crack the whole mystery open. The early entries were ordinary trip notes, little observations, lists of birds, weather coordinates, jokes about Tyler's stubbornness, Emily's constant photos, Sarah's quiet sketches. But around the halfway point, the tone shifted. First came mentions of feeling watched. "Thought I saw someone near camp last night. Tall, thin, just at the edge of the firelight. Tyler says I'm jumpy." Then the dreams. "Can't sleep. Keep hearing that voice soft, like under the rock." I think Sarah hears it too. She's been drawing circles in the sand. By the last entries, Jason's handwriting frayed. The words cramped into margins. They're in the caves, not animals, not people like us. Emily wants to leave. Tyler says, "Stay calm." Sarah's not talking. Abram came again tonight, said, "We're part of this now." The final page was smeared, ink dragged by a shaking hand. One word over and over, pressed so hard the pen tore through the paper. Stay. The discovery of Jason's journal hit the families like a crack through glass. At first, there was relief. Something tangible, something left behind. But as the pages were read, relief twisted into confusion, then suspicion. Emily's mother clutched the journal to her chest during the first press conference. Her knuckles white, eyes swollen. "They suffered," she whispered. "They were terrified." And Tyler was there. Jason's father sat stiff back beside her, fists clenched on his knees. "He's not telling us everything," he said flatly. "He knows more. He's holding it back." Across the room, Sarah's mother wept quietly, shaking her head. "He's a victim too," she murmured. "Look at him. He's broken. We can't ask more of him." Reporters circled like crows, pushing microphones into faces, spitting out headlines. Survivor or witness, hero or liar. At the hospital, Tyler watched the news from his room. The sound turned down low. His mother sat nearby reading from a Bible with trembling hands. When his father came in, he stared at the screen for a long moment before muttering, "They're tearing each other apart." Tyler didn't answer. His gaze stayed fixed on the footage. The canyon flashing across the screen, a silhouette at the rim, a headline scrolling below. In the reflection on the glass, his own face looked hollow, almost unrecognizable. And somewhere deep in his chest, he felt it again. That flicker of dread, of unfinished things, of voices still whispering his name. At night, Tyler's mind split open. He saw the fires first low, flickering, ringed with faces. Abram standing at the center, arms raised, chanting words Tyler never learned, but somehow understood. They weren't prayers, they were promises. He remembered the hunts, stumbling through narrow passages, hands bloodied from rock and thorn, forced to chase rabbits, snakes, anything that moved. Hunger sharpened his senses until they were raw, until every sound cracked like thunder in his skull. He remembered Emily's voice whispering plans in the dark, shaking his shoulder, eyes fierce. Jason's laugh, thin and broken, trying to lift the weight. Sarah's sketches scratched into the cave walls, drawings that twisted into spirals, then into things Tyler couldn't look at without his stomach nodding. There were moments of defiance. Emily slapping Abram across the face, Jason spitting at the ground, Sarah singing softly when they were told to be silent. But defiance, Tyler knew, didn't save them. It only marked them. And in the last days when the others were gone, Tyler felt the shift Abram's eyes on him. the hush that fell when he entered the chamber, the cold press of a hand on his forehead. "You're ready," Abram had whispered. "Go show them." Tyler jerked awake in his hospital bed, chest heaving, sweat cold on his skin. And every time, just before his eyes opened, he heard the same thing. "We're still here." The question started quiet, murmured in hallways, passed between investigators over cold coffee and late-night files. What if he wasn't just a victim? The journal hinted at unraveling minds, at pressure inside the group before the others disappeared. Tyler had survived what none of them had. He knew trails no one had mapped, and every time they pressed him for details, his answers frayed, tangled, or simply stopped. The lead agent, Ramirez, voiced it first in a closed meeting. "We can't rule out the possibility," she said, fingers tapping Jason's journal. "Cursed, maybe, but we have to consider it." They dug into his past, his outdoor training, his fascination with survival challenges, his willingness to go off-grid. In the hospital, they watched him on surveillance pacing, whispering to himself, tapping fingers to his temple, like he was keeping count of something only he could hear. Families split further. Emily's mother recoiled at the thought. "He's broken, but he's innocent," she insisted. Jason's father wasn't so sure. "They needed a leader," he snapped, "or a scapegoat." Ramirez requested another interview, but Tyler's doctor blocked it. "You're pushing him too far," she warned. "He's hanging by a thread." But the agents watched the hospital feed anyway, eyes sharp, noting every odd pause, every muttered word. In a grainy clip, Tyler sat at the window, gaze fixed on the canyon in the distance. His mouth moved, barely a whisper, but the tech boosted the audio. 2 words, "Not done." Long after the search teams left, after the agents filed their reports, after the families drifted home clutching empty grief, the canyon remained. It has always remained. They call it a wonder of the world, a place of staggering beauty and silence. Layers of rock older than memory, rivers cutting deep like time itself has teeth. Tourists stand at the edge, wide-eyed, whispering about how small they feel. Photographers chase the perfect shot, sunrise against stone. Scientists map its walls, its fossils, its whispers of the past. But there are things no map can hold. Places where sound twists strangely, where shadows fall, where compasses falter. Locals tell stories of figures seen at dusk, of campfires that vanish when approached, of shapes along the cliffs that are too tall, too thin, too still. Tyler wasn't the first to walk out of the canyon changed. He won't be the last. For all its beauty, the Grand Canyon is not tamed ground. It watches, waits, takes, and sometimes, if it chooses, it gives something back. But it never gives back everything. Even now, if you stand at the rim long enough in the hush just before dawn, you might hear it. Laughter caught on the wind, a faint voice calling from below, a flicker of movement at the edge of sight. Or maybe that's just the canyon reminding you wonder and terror have always been 2 sides of the same stone. It was his sister Anna who finally broke through. She came to the hospital alone, slipping past reporters and agents, past the nurses who gave her the kind of look people reserve for families marked by tragedy. She sat at his bedside, knees pulled to her chest, eyes fixed on her brother, this thin, ruined version of the boy she remembered. For a long time she said nothing, then softly, "Ty, do you remember that summer at the lake house when we were kids?" His lips twitched barely. "We stayed out too long on the water, and Mom was so mad." A breath, a small laugh. "You told me if we don't tell her everything, maybe it won't all be bad. Remember?" His eyes flicked toward her just for a second. Anna reached for his hand, cold and dry in hers. "Ty, they think you're lying." Her voice broke. "Are you?" Silence stretched thin between them. His fingers twitched once, twice, then barely a whisper. "There's more." She leaned in, heart pounding. He didn't look at her when he said it. His gaze drifted past her to the window to the canyon beyond. "You wouldn't believe me." Anna's throat tightened. She squeezed his hand once, gently. "Try me." But Tyler only closed his eyes and, in the faintest voice, almost like a prayer, "They're still there." The reports were filed. The press moved on. The families drifted home, some with anger, some with grief, all with an emptiness nobody could fill. Tyler remained in the hospital, a figure half in and half out of the world, his name slipping from headlines into murmured legend. The canyon remained as it always had, vast, ancient, unmoved. For every trail mapped, there are a dozen unmarked. For every stone studied, there are caverns no light has touched. People come to the canyon searching for something: wonder, challenge, escape. Some leave with memories, some leave with scars, some don't leave at all. The investigators debated theories, but the canyon didn't care. It swallowed the truth in the same way it swallowed light at dusk slowly, beautifully, without apology. And maybe that's why, even now, hikers pause at the rim, feeling something they can't name pulling at their skin. Maybe that's why the stories linger about laughter in the night, shapes on the cliffs, faces glimpsed between the rocks. Not everything is meant to be solved. Not every survivor comes back whole. In the end, the Grand Canyon keeps what it wants, and sometimes it lets something walk out, but never without leaving part of itself behind. This story was brutal, but this story on the right-hand side is even more insane.